So what's up, y'all? Today I have somebody I'm super excited to have. Phil Carroll is a person I went to college with. This guy, man, he does a job that's on my bucket list of items to learn how to do. And it's actually one of the things as a youth that I actually wanted to do. Well, better yet, in college, that I had mapped out. Like, this is how you could potentially do it. And, life happens and you forget. And so for that reason, we're not going to say what the actual immediate job is. We're going to go straight to the first and most important question. Do you like your job?
Most days, man, it's still going to work, but I feel like my complaints won't compare to normal people's complaints that do a different job. So like I definitely enjoy my job um, a lot actually.
Okay. And the second part to that is like the reason I asked this question, I never actually explained why I asked the question of, and I want the answer to, um, what's the first profession you remember wanting to have? I never explained that, but the reason I do that is because they say most people um, die at 40. Well, most people die at 21, but they don't get buried until they're 60 or whatever old age we want to say.
Yeah,
And it's because once responsibility comes in, that version of themselves just dies and they forget about the aspirations they have. They may take on certain things in the process and just going with life. And frankly, I think the true idea of not having limits is when we're young. And I already heard somewhat of your idea of what that job was. So I want you to get that while we on camera now. So what was that first job that you were interested in?
so the first job I wanted to do as a youth was the coolest job I could think of, and that was to be James Bond. That was to travel the world, speak multiple languages, be able to maneuver my way in and out of the world, um, whether it was a hostage situation or a night out at the casino. Like James Bond was the coolest man in the world because there would be a situation where I got to get out of this room. There's a car. Cool, I can hop in the car. Everybody got a driver's license. No thing. There's a motorcycle. James Bond, no problem. There's a helicopter. James Bond, no problem. Airplane. Didn't matter where. He basically, there was a movie title back in early 80s for one of the James Bonds. It was called License to Kill, where it was he had a license to do anything he wanted vehicle wise, whether it was a boat, jet ski, it didn't matter. And I kind of really enjoyed that part of it where I can go get a license to do almost anything. I had no desire to be a killer or anything, license to kill, but every other aspect of it, that seemed like the best job out there.
Well, it seems like you've taken on a job that doesn't give you all of those privileges, but it still allows you to potentially travel the world. Um, it is interesting though, because in 2020, James Bond could most definitely look like you, while in the 80s and every other series, it did not. Now, I'll also say, when it came to Bond, like, I don't want to be judged. I always was impressed by him, but the truth is, I never seen a single James Bond film. I just played GoldenEye as a kid. Uh,
Uh,
yeah, on the 64. That's the only thing. It's kind of messed up. That's my only real experience with him, and hearing the stories and hearing, I think, Bond, James Bond, and then I guess Austin Powers with his spoof type energy of James Bond. So I had the idea who he was. I thought it was super cool. He was always clean, and apparently a part of him was like his suit. His I think his watches were a big deal. I'm not.
watching people normally gadget Phil. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, man. I got you. I got you. So because I'm excited about this, I just want to get straight to it. Go ahead and tell them exactly what it is that you do and what the title is.
So I have been actively working as a commercial pilot for a little over 3 years now. My current title is a flight instructor, and so I get to share what I've learned over a very short period of time and try to announce it with some expertise for a lot of up and coming pilots as well.
Okay, talk to me about the benefits of this, because as soon as you say that, for my audience who doesn't know, I was supposed to be talking to Phil in Puerto Rico. Today, he's in Arizona, and he's currently in a house that is just one of his places that he gets to. What was the actual term you called it?
I think I use the term crash pad. This is just where we stay temporarily whenever we're on assignment. So I was indeed supposed to be in Puerto Rico, but one of the common themes that we are probably going to discuss in this is the ability to change, accept cancellations, expect some last minute things with stuff not going your way, and just how to deal with that. So, I think it was about 36 hours ago, I was on my way to San Juan, and then some paperwork issue comes up. You're going to stay in Phoenix today. So, yeah, there's that. I'm trying to remember your original question. You said
Benefit. What are some of the benefits of your job?
benefits of my job. So there's a large there's a large phase or a large like window of things that you could say a benefit of a pilot is, but that depends on what the pilot does. For me, I am a flight instructor, which basically you can put the equivalent as I'm a school teacher. I might be like a college professor on the level of stuff that we teach, but I'm a school teacher at this point, where I go to the same airport every single day for right now, and the students might change. They come in on cycles where they come in, get their training, they graduate, and it's um it's really fun when we talk about a school teacher in a college setting where you are at University of Cincinnati. We have diversity. We have people from all over the place, but most of the time we got people from Columbus, we got people from Cleveland, we got some people from out of state. For me, I got majority of the students I work with, they're out of Japan, they're from India, they're from parts of Europe. Very rarely do I get to run into somebody domestically from the United States. And when I do, we're at every corner. So Florida, New York, California, Ohio, everything is like represented really, really well. So the first standout benefit is I can say I got friends in Delhi, I got friends in Tokyo, I got friends that live in Amsterdam now. And this is just a small facet of it where your social connections in this industry spread out immensely
Yeah.
because it's a large community, but it's really not that large a community. But I'm gonna go back and we'll touch on what everyone thinks is the benefits, hopping on flights for free, traveling, you get to hang out with flight attendants, all these things that you would come up. But again, that's depending on what your job is, what company you work for, what level you've reached in your profession. Where I was supposed to be in Puerto Rico, it wasn't work related. It was going to be probably heavily discounted from the connections that I made, but that's that's just working within the industry. So if you don't know, I have a very beautiful wife. She works for one of the U.S. major airlines, and I was just tagging along on her layover this weekend, where that's one of the many benefits of me getting into this was meeting that, getting exposed, I guess, to a whole industry that otherwise would not have known anything about.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess you kind of mean so. Let's stay on the part. So I guess let me ask this question: where are you waking up every day and going to work? Because it sounds like you said that you go to the same place and you have different students.
Right,
That's
right,
why I'm
right.
trying to understand how are you getting students from around the world opposed to students from closer to where you are if you're going to the same place opposed to going to say Amsterdam and teaching there.
Got it, got it. So currently I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. If you don't know Phoenix, Phoenix is sunshine, beautiful skies year round. Like it's middle of November, temperature's gonna be up to like 85 degrees today. We still run AC and t-shirts all year round. And that's why pilots from all over the world, I'm getting a little feedback, hopefully that's not me in my audio. Pilots from all over the world come here to train, and I work at one of the four largest flight training operations, and three of them are based here in Phoenix, Arizona. So we all share the same airspace. We all share the great weather. And what my job, my current company, they're known for building simulators, but we have a pretty significant footprint in the flight training as well with a lot of their airline partners that they build simulators for. Uh, the the market pre-pandemic was going to be very, very short of pilots. So airlines from international airlines would do their own recruiting and we would do the training for them in order to prepare these cadets to go straight onto the flight line. It's not a very popular idea for the United States Airlines because there was a traditional halfway to that the U.S. didn't really follow like the international airlines. But we have a great marketing team that sells our product all over the world, and we get students from all over the world too. So
It's pretty cool, man. So you mentioned this part about being James Bond and knowing languages. Do you know any other languages?
I struggle through Spanish. That's about it, man. I struggle through Spanish right now. There's goal to already like start learning multiple other languages, but at this time, I want to get to a different place in life where I can actually dedicate that time. I actually want to go take a class, get a tutor, and start learning all those similarities. But I got probably 10 phrases in Japanese, probably 4 phrases in Hindi, all the stuff that will just come up naturally from you working with people from all over the place.
Okay. I just know you said you're working with them, so I'm like, I didn't know if there's like translators in the room or Phil just is like, hey man, I'm that guy. I I can speak whatever you want me to speak. Well, what you need.
Not yet, not yet. That's a personal goal though, at some point in the future.
Respect. So we talked about some of the benefits. What are some of the challenges about, I mean, of being a pilot as well as a flight instructor?
Well, the biggest challenge is getting into this, where we used to do standardized tests and everybody was kind of measured the exact same going into like college or going into a job where you can measure somebody's acumen based off of a score. With us, there's only one standard. We have a book that says you have to do this, 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 and this within this criteria, and you have a license. So everybody that is a flight instructor day one has the same qualifications as me coming off the line as a flight instructor. It's now once you maneuver your way into it, it's your quality of work is what keeps you there. But it's that initial getting stuff into it where if you wanted a private pilot's license, it's very well laid out plan. You have to do X amount of hours on the plane. You have to learn this, 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 and then the check ride is going to be an hour and a half. And I can tell you exactly what's going to be on it. And you can almost teach a chimpanzee how to actually fly the airplane up to that point of getting your license. It's what happens beyond that once you get into your job is how you maneuver it. That faces its own challenges, and I guess to that point, you asked what are the challenges of it. It's turning yourself off from the job if you can. It's not something where clock out of work and you cease being a pilot. It's now I'm driving from the airport home. I can't get a speeding ticket because that's going to negatively affect my work. I can't um, I can't be out and be seen in a compromising situation because it now affects the company more so than just me on an individual level where we can be we're scrutinized on a personal level. That I think is the biggest challenge where you have to keep almost a squeaky clean record. A black pilot, we all know there's certain niches in the industry where we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard or a higher accord than any other counterparts, and that exists through almost 24 hours a day in this good regard.
Huh. Why? I don't understand the speeding ticket. What's the speeding ticket have to do with a person in the sky? I don't that didn't cross over for me. I'm sorry.
So the ultimate license that we can get is called an airline transport pilot. That's what all of your Delta pilots, American Airlines, all of the major carriers, you have to have this ultimate license. And on the books, as one of the qualifications for this is be of good moral standing. That is on the books as one of the requirements for obtaining this professional license, where that has been spun since the early 1900s as no tattoos, no facial hair, probably fairer skin than what I'm presenting, trouble with the law, the drinking problems, things like that is all built into what everyone's image of a pilot is. When you walk through the airport and you see them with the hat and the gold and the epaulets and everything like that, this is your image of what a pilot should be, and it basically expands across everyday life in that regard. But it's needed, and we could talk about the reason why that image is needed, and that's public safety and how dangerous or not dangerous our job is on a daily basis. And you want what a responsible person is going to be. And a speeding ticket might not affect your career. A handful of them might. A DUI derails your career. It's over from that. Whether it's in the car, which has nothing to do with your actual skill set in the airplane. It's the decision making that is up, and that's what is constantly being judged right there. It's the decision making.
Yeah, I can understand the decision making part, especially with the DUI, because if you're willing to do it in a car, where else are you willing to do it? Because of DUI, drinking while, I mean, that's just something you shouldn't do in general. So I can absolutely see where that comes in. And but the other part though is the idea of having to live up to a standard. Like that's really interesting, in this world where we could put on a facade at work opposed to having to be this person at all times. So being perfect in everything that you do, and obviously no one's perfect, and I know you're not saying that you're perfect, but it's funny because I'm like, are you this guy that we hate to be in a car with because you're gonna have to just, I mean, ironically, you are a pilot, so are you putting it on like cruise control instead of like, all right, we at 25, it's a 25 miles an hour zone, cool, we're gonna put it on 27, we're gonna sit, let it sit. Or you like, all right, we got to see at 25, we at 25. Or do you go ahead and we're not going to expose how fast you drive. But I'm just asking, are you going to get on my nerves having to be in a car with you because you concerned about that ticket?
Well, depends on how fast you want to get there. I am at cruise control at 4 miles per hour over the speed limit, and this is the reason why. Is I've had the past where I've done fast, and that pass had almost came back and bit me where I wouldn't have any opportunities in the aviation industry because of this long record of poor decisions behind the car. Like, why were you driving that fast? Why were you here? Why were you doing this? And we have to explain all of that prior to getting a permanent position. You have to explain every time you got pulled over, explain every ticket, every accident. You have to explain all these things because they take your driving record very seriously in terms of decision making and operating motor vehicles of any type, whether it's an airplane or a car. So for me, I do make that decision. The speed limit from here to the job is 45. I'm at 48 every single day, cruise control without fail. Just pushing that limit enough to where I'm not annoyed because I don't want to go 45 every single time or 3 miles per hour under that speed limit for that same reason. I might still get up and get loose on the open highway, but I had to come to terms that I am not 19. I can't use that as an excuse anymore. You should know better, and I just have to exhibit that as well.
Yeah, I feel it, man. So, huh, what was it that got you into this industry? At what point, and at what point was that? I'm asking that because it sounds like you have to be forward thinking because if you come into this thing with a record, you're never going to get in. So, at
Right.
what point did you decide that you wanted to do it? And yeah,
So when you talk to pilots, 90% of the time they're going to tell you, oh, I always wanted to do this as a kid, or my dad was a pilot, or my uncle was a pilot, and they had that exposure and they worked for it. Starting in high school, you start going for their PPL. I was a late bloomer with this. I used to work at the University of Cincinnati Campus Rec Center. I was a program manager doing that 9 to 5 type sort of thing where I had self-reflection one day. It was a bad day at work where something was really annoying, and I was like, "Why am I here? Why am I doing this job? this was not what I came to college for. This is not what the trajectory of my career path was going to be. Why am I sitting here doing this? I need a change. It was kind of like a quarter life crisis, not midlife, because it's still pretty young, probably 23, 24 at this point. Um, where it's so funny that you asked the first question that you asked, you said, as a youth, what's the first job that you wanted to do? I went back and did that same sort of thinking and wrote down a list of what jobs did you want to be as a kid. You know, okay, I thought firefighters were kind of cool, lawyers were kind of cool. Number 4 on that list was pilot. Kind of wrote that down, kept going down, like, all right, you want to work the stock market, maybe, you know, all these lucrative jobs that would, you know, help provide for my family and everything like that. But I kept circling back to that number 4 on the list, pilot. And anytime I read it, said it out loud, there was a little smile that kind of came up. Like, yeah, that actually sounds dope. Like, how do you do that? Quick Google search. How do you become a pilot? Said 5 years, $100,000, and squeaky clean record. Yo, that's a lot. That's tough. Um, but I can spend 5 years doing something that I enjoy but don't necessarily like love, or I can spend the 5 years working at this new career because 5 years is gonna pass regardless. So I did what we call a discovery flight. You take $100 to your local airport, find a flight instructor that's gonna take you up on the airplane, and they let you fly around. For mine, it was a pilot named Jose. He was working out of Harrison or Cincinnati West. It was just on the west side of Cincinnati. We overflew downtown Cincinnati. It was dope. We came back and landed, and he said, "What'd you think?" I was like, I want to do this. This is a career path I want to do." But then reality sets in. You don't have the $100,000. You don't have all these connections. You don't have the time. But it was something that you really got to come to terms with. If this is what you want to do, you're willing to face each one of those obstacles as they come. And for me, it was like, well, I might not have everything I need on day one, but I can chip away at this thing. I can do what I can manage today. And as long as it's still turning towards that goal, I didn't mind if it was going to take, instead of a 4-year process, it's going to take me 8 years because of the resources I had. It was one of those things I had decided, this is what I'm going to do, whatever the pace is going to be.
Okay. Okay. So, and I have some questions still related to that, but you said something that I think I haven't heard anyone say before, and I want you to speak on it. You mentioned you went to the list of jobs and you started saying them out loud, and you said being a pilot, and it made you smile. Come on,
Yeah.
man, you got to talk about that. I haven't like That's such a powerful thought. I've never even thought about it like that. And to hear someone say that, that's that. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to prime you by saying something. So I just want you to go ahead and expand upon that thought and what was going on.
Got you. So in context, we are 15, 16 years old when we first start applying to colleges. You might have an idea of what you want to do. You might not. And my dad was a family practitioner doctor. He just retired this past year. So I knew that medicine was an opportunity there. So I just kind of chose a major when I was applying for school. Said, all right, I'm going to be a doctor, health science, and then refine kind of what that is, where I wanted to be a surgeon. And again, this is at 16. It sounds great. You know that's going to be hard work, and the rewards are going to be there at the end of it. But as we start going through college and I get exposure to more things and I get internships and, you know, a lot of these things where you got to come to terms like, yeah, the job sounds great, the pay's there, but I don't know if that's my calling in that case, where I was fortunate enough to be smart enough, I guess. That's a really awkward way of saying it. I know that I had options. I could do a lot of different things if you put your mind to it. Like I know I could be successful in a lot of different career fields. So now it was just a matter of honing in on where do you want to be successful at? Because you can be a successful hustler. That's great. That's not a field that I want to be in. You can be a successful doctor. Again, that's great. It's just not that was my calling. So thinking about what's going to make me proud to wake up every single day, what's going to make me not grumble like, oh man, I got to go to work again today, and what jobs presented themselves for that. I just kept circling back, and I guess it was just something, a feeling that this this is something that I can do and not be disgruntled. I don't want to be a grumpy person at the job. I don't want to complain constantly at the job. We have our a few complaints, like if your 10-hour day turns into a 14-hour day, like everybody's going to be a little perturbed by that. But on most occasions, it was having a vision of, all right, if you can make it through this relatively short period of time, whether it's 4 or 5 years, might as well do it and really enjoy what that back end's got.
Okay, okay. So you mentioned how many years it takes to become a pilot. It sounds like it takes between 4 to 5 years. Is that accurate?
Um, if you, it's all, and it's never a typical. There's no typical path, unfortunately. So for me, I had my license to teach all within 2 years. So it was me working at it full time as a student, as a flight student. Like you can get your private pilot's license. That's the first step in probably 2 weeks, and then you have, and that's working extremely hard, and that's not typical, but it can be done. Go ahead.
What size plane is that?
This is your everyday small airplane, single engine. You got you and a friend, you and an instructor, maybe somebody in the back seat. But it's funny that you mentioned that. They all get treated the same. It's just levels to how much experience you get with a larger aircraft. So you can go get your private pilot's license, which grants you the opportunity to go rent an airplane, man. You can go fly out for your weekends, do all these things just like you would rent a car, which is awesome. Then that next step is that commercial pilot's license. So we go from a 40-hour minimum to a minimum of 250 flight hours plus some specifics within that. So that's the biggest jump, is going from I'm really learning a lot to now you are responsible for your own career and building that time. Is flight hours are never planes are expensive, the fuel, everything. It becomes a really big obstacle is the finances going into flight training. So how quickly you can get it done, if you have unlimited resources in terms of finances and time, it can be done very, very quickly. If you are a person like me, like I said, I was planning on doubling that time because I didn't have the finances all at once. It was just gonna try to maneuver my way through it. But for how I ended up here, it was 2 years of training, and then, like I said, about 3 years or so of actually working in the industry, still learning, still gaining experience, and that's what you need to have in order to get to the next level, which is going to be the airline world.
Okay. Okay. So, we know when you go to college, you have to figure, and you don't have money, you can take out a student loan. Are
Yeah.
there like pilot loans or whatnot to be able to cover a flight school, or do you have to literally cover that on your own? Like how does that go?
There is different ways of financial assistance. So at first, when I was flying out of the small airport in Cincinnati, it was all out of pocket. Like, hey, I was driving Lyft, or actually, yeah, I was driving Lyft, and if I made an extra $200 that week, that was an hour and a half flight. That was one lesson. I could go do that, and honestly, that's not something you can do consistently. Is piecemeal it together, like, all right, once a week I'm gonna go try to fly and I'm gonna make a career out of it. So I just ended up trying to save money and then do it all at once. I actually got involved with a brand new program. A host airline here in the US decided that they were going to have a pilot shortage, and they wanted to do something about it. So they were offering pilot positions with the company with based off of no experience, which sounds crazy. You don't fly airliners with no experience. Like, what are you talking about? But if they're under the program, they were going to train you from no experience up to airline quality pilot. Um, but there was a certain cost with it, and I actually was fortunate enough to get in to that program, then worry about the costs, and they were able to speak with banks and get approval for a large sum of money, a large proportion of the total cost of the program, because they had their word, like, yeah, if not that they were signing on for it, but they were able to make phone calls and negotiate what that financial aid was going to be. On your own, it depends on your credit score, it depends on your cosigner, it depends on your own. Yeah, you can definitely get a loan just like you would for college, but being able to explain it, because not a lot of flight schools aren't accredited universities. You have to be able to prove like this is like a business loan on yourself in a way. So I was able to go through a program that they had already taught on our behalf, so that the odds of approval were much higher. But yeah, there's people that pay out of pocket. More power to them. I was not one of them. There's people that take out loans, and I'm still paying that loan off every single day right now. And then there's those that get extremely fortunate, and maybe their mentor in the game or their connect kind of gifts them that training, whether they got to pay for it or not. That's the ultimate goal, is to see how much of this you can get for free, I guess. I don't know.
No, I understand. That's the conversation of OPM, other people's money, and when you start talking to different investors, that's what a big thing to talk about, especially people in real estate. But let's go ahead and just map it out. You've given several details about it, but I want to create a clear journey path in which you've taken. So let's say starting out of high school, because of the fact that obviously I know you went to UC.
Right.
Now I'm questioning, did you finish UC? But that all needs to be a part of your story, because obviously you've gotten to the destination you wanted. So I would love to hear what your actual whole path was to get to where you are
Okay.
now.
So I went to high school in Southern California. I decided I wanted to go away for school. So I chose a destination that was far enough away, but I had family there. My dad grew up in the city of Cincinnati. I had a ton of family there, so I ended up going to the University of Cincinnati. I was in the college allied health science. I did finish in 4 years. I graduated with health science and biomechanics. I was on path originally for med school. I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. Somewhere around junior year, for some circumstances, I changed majors to pre-physical therapy and started doing a lot of internships and just observations in that field as well. And then decided I still want to kind of go to med school, but I don't have the GPA for it. So I'm going to go to grad school, and I pursued health education in grad school at UC. And then actually, right in the after the first year of grad school is where this whole decision making process came to pass, where I don't actually want to be in this field. What's something that I actually want to do? So I guess the pathway: graduated high school 2008, got to UC 2008, lived in Dabney. Everybody that is from the Cincinnati area might know what that means. For those of your viewers that don't worry about it. Ask a Bearcat when you get a chance. But college was a lot of fun. I was going to class. I started working. Part of the reason why my major change was I was actually working two jobs on top of a full student load schedule. So was not getting a lot of sleep, probably junior, senior year. And then the classes actually become meaningful and more difficult. Was still able to finish on time, had a decent GPA, but I didn't want to go to med school in the Dominican Republic. I wanted to go to med school, somewhere reputable in the United States and all that other stuff, or so I thought. So it was still working, and um, trying to get GPA up, trying to do grad school, just padding the resume. in order to get where I'm going. But as I'm working towards this, the motivation for it was also kind of lacking. And I got comfortable. I started working full time at the university while still doing school. And that complacentness, or that when you get comfortable in a role, your motivation to do overtly things just kind of diminishes. And I was actually upset with myself a little bit that you have so much potential. Why aren't you using it? And that's why we wrote down the job list, and that's why we changed course.
Okay. Okay. So we're in college. We graduated. We graduated. Well, do we graduate grad school?
No, have not finished that yet. I'm gonna put that yet out there. I don't want to be the least qualified person in the household. The wife's working on her second master's right now, so I got to get at least my first one done. But I'm gonna change the field out of health education into probably something business oriented or something else that speaks to me in that regard.
Okay. Okay. So now we've gotten to the list. You've already discussed the actual flight process, pretty much from starting with Jose. Jose, was he a mentor, or was this just a one-off situation where you came there and he gave you the flight? You came down feeling like you were still in the sky, like, man, I want to do this and I'm excited. Did he give you the guidance, or did you have somebody else? What helped you to get to the next level?
So with Jose, it's actually a really funny story. It starts off as a one-off, like, hey, like to schedule a flight. Yeah, come in on Friday at this time. We'll go through a little bit of ground instruction and we'll take you up in the plane. And then obviously I enjoyed it, went back the next week and we did that again. And then Jose, being we don't really stay in the same place for too long. He ended up moving out of Cincinnati, going into Columbus for another instructing job, and then working towards an airline. I'm gonna pause Jose right there, and I'll bring him back here in just a minute to where. So he was a one-off. When he left, I was kind of like, I don't want to fly with a different instructor right now. This is where I decided I'm just going to start saving up money. We fast forward about 18 months, and I'm now doing the program when I've relocated to Phoenix, Arizona, and I get a random pop-up message on Facebook from Jose. Hey man, I see that you are still pursuing the career. That's great. Are you XYZ company in Phoenix? Said, yeah. He was like, hey man, I just accepted a job there. I'm gonna be there 2 months. So now I'm a student, and my first instructor comes back into the fold 3,000 miles away at the same airport, same school. So where it really highlights how small the aviation industry is. I don't know if you are familiar with the stats, but there's less than 10% of 1% of the US population is actually pilots. And then minority pilots is even a smaller fraction of that. So we're only talking about 500,000 people that are pilots out of 320, what's the US population? 320 million. So we're talking about 500,000 people are pilots. So we get to know each other, whether you know it or not. It's very small. You know somebody that knows this person every single time. So we just kind of bring back 3,000 miles later after two flights with Jose. We're like old friends in that regard. Like, yeah, man, we talk about Cincinnati, talk about the chili, we talk about all this other stuff, but that's how small it is. So with Jose, yeah, it's a one-off, but there is no real one-offs. Every relationship that you forge in this comes kind of full circle. So to talk about that being perfect and not messing up. And that's the reason why you don't badmouth another pilot. You don't do all these other things because you never know where your path is going to lead, and kind of talk to them on that. But there's been a lot of hands on my training, a lot of hands helping me through, a lot of great mentors where it's not something I expected, because for the longest time, I've been way too prideful to ask for help with a lot of things. So like with finances, like, yeah, you could go seek out a loan, but I was like, I'm just gonna get this second job and I'm gonna piecemeal it together by myself. but this is not undertaking that you should do by yourself. You should definitely get as many mentors as you can, as I can attest that without two significant people that have helped me through this training, I probably would not be here today right
Mm. That's so important, man. People have to know that they need people. Like the idea of being a self-made person just isn't a reality, because at the end of the day, humans are interdependent beings. I'm able to talk to you because somebody created my laptop, which gave me Zoom, which somebody else created as well. I'm able to look professional because somebody bought these clothes. I'm able to be educated because somebody taught me this content. And so that's something people have to recognize and always keep in mind, because if you don't, you end up getting lost in trying to figure out all this stuff on your own, which is why we have this, to avoid that type of issue, so people have the blueprint. Now with that, you're teaching it, but, and I'm just gonna say random companies, so a United Airlines, or American Airlines, or Delta. Do you fly any? You don't have to say the name of one, but do you actually fly commercial?
now. So I was supposed to begin this past summer. Obviously, with the COVID pandemic, the industry has been flipped on the side of its head. So we went from a global pilot shortage to an immediate pilot surplus. So I still have my um, job offer and class date just postponed indefinitely for me to take that next step. So instead of teaching around Arizona and the Southwest United States, actually doing what everyone perceives as what a commercial pilot should do, which is flying airliners. Again, that's one facet of the industry. There's a lot of other pilot type jobs that are out there. So mine is, I'm ready. I'm there. I'm on the edge. I'm on the verge. Just waiting for hopefully a vaccine that causes people to travel more, that causes the industry to come back. Because if we're not flying, you don't need that many airplanes. You don't need that many airplanes. You don't need that many pilots. So just kind of sitting here waiting, being very, very patient with the industry right now.
Oh man, I understand. I see how it can definitely impact your livelihood. I mean, those are the conversations people are constantly talking about, the investing into the actual airline industries and whatnot. And personally, I mean, they tell a kid that you're grounded because they acted out, and I'm like, man, COVID has me truly feeling grounded because I can't get out of nowhere. Like I'm not accustomed to having to be in a specific city for this long. It just is not me. Like once a year, I'm usually in Florida, and other times in other multiple different states, whether or not it's every single month or from week to week. Like that's something I'm accustomed to. So I fully get the idea that the world has been turned on its head. And frankly, we used to, I mean, the planet, it was a thing in which people were so interconnected that you'd have somebody flying from China to New York to handle business on like a weekly basis. And now, what's going on? And so, prayerfully, you'll be at it next year. So it sounds like your dreams and things are in progress. We just need, just like everyone else, the world to get back to being normal. Whatever.
Yeah, I don't even know if it would be in progress because I've met all of the steps to do it, and it's just the timing was just really unfortunate. Had the pandemic started 3 months later, I'd be having a different conversation, probably in a different city, under a different set of circumstances. But it's it's not something that you can be upset with in this industry where we talk about, like, we one of our initial takes, we were talking about San Juan, Puerto Rico, and plans being changed and documents being changed, where that's our daily reality. We can predict the weather, but we can't actually dictate what that weather is going to be. So we might cancel. We can do all the things that we can to make sure that the plane is airworthy, safe, and not going to break. But if I make it out to an airport and the plane broke, there's not much I can do. We're just kind of sitting and waiting. So we you, you get the mindset of you want to be on time, but there's no point in rushing because there is no on time in this industry. Like everybody, you buy a plane ticket, you expect to get to your destination at this specific time. There's so many moving parts and so many factors that kind of play into that happening, that if one of those things doesn't fall into place perfectly, you're just SOL. You're not gonna make it there on that time. You might be 3 hours delayed. You might be a flight canceled, and that's just something that we deal with on a daily basis. Like we want to get you there, but I'm not gonna risk life and limb if it's the difference between flying through a thunderstorm or something like that. And so I take the pandemic as just those obstacles that, yeah, you couldn't plan for it. It's not going to deter you. You still want to do this job. You still have all of the certifications. You still have all the training. You still have all the want to. It's just a matter of, can you be humble enough to, instruct longer than what you planned for? Because this is not an unplanned phase of my life. It's more of the best laid plans just didn't follow the same timeline in that regard.
Yeah. Well, prayers up. I'm certain everything's gonna work out, and next time we might have to do this all over again, so you can tell me the experience of what the commercial pilot life is, because that's an experience in itself, which I would love to hear. But you mentioned something, weather, and I want to say, so I actually, true story. Uh, Obviously, I ran track in college. The year of Hurricane Katrina, I was there for the Junior Olympics. It was about a week. I want to say it really was like within 7 days, we were there for the championship. And it was really interesting to look back and to know that a hurricane hit right after I left. But the hurricane that I also want to mention, that was like a hurricane season. This is me just putting a date on, because I can't remember what year that was exactly, but I remember it was that year. That same year, we ran at the AAU Nationals, which was in, one of them at least was in Florida, at the Mickey Mouse Milk House, I think it's called, or something like that. It's where the bubble was, where the NBA bubble was. That's
Yeah.
where the track was. And when we flew out, this is mad wow, and I need to know and understand several things related to the experiences of pilots. I want to know if that pilot was just BSing me, because I absolutely, excuse my letters, I definitely did not look. But he was like, if you're we're flying out, and if you look over to your left, you can see the hurricane coming in. And I'm like, the what? What's happening? Like, and I don't like, I'm not a, like, I don't like fear. So I would love to know how to fly to address that. Just like I want to go skydiving at some point. The more and more I have to lose, the less I want to do it. I'm not gonna lie, but I did want to do that, and I still kind of do. But nonetheless, is that possible? First off, and then I got a follow-up question about the bumpy road that you have sometimes when you're in the air, and when you're a person like myself who's sitting there and you just relaxing, like, man, this is a bumpy road, and then you like, wait, no, it ain't. We in the sky. How's we hitting potholes right now in the sky? So first, start off with the hurricane. Does that actually happen? Because I did not look out that window. I wish it did. I did not.
To address your first question, absolutely, definitely possible for us to be getting out just in time, or be able to see a weather phenomenon off to a distance. Because if it's a large storm, we can see those from hundreds of miles away if it's large enough. In terms of a hurricane, you're going to see that from a pretty great distance. I would say that first and foremost, no pilot is going to take undue risk in just getting the plane off the ground. If it's more prudent to wait, we'll wait it out. So we plan on, if there's a safe margin for us to get out, we'll go for it. So you should be confident that there was a safe margin in the storm, and he was just highlighting the visuals for you. As I have done some flying in Florida, somewhere around 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day in the summer, you're going to get some storm buildup, you're going to get some lightning, and you just kind of hope that it's either further enough away or it's going in a different direction, or else you're going to be out of luck. So in that regard, yeah, you can look out the window, you can see a lot of exciting stuff. I'm gonna just call it exciting. Um, Depends on what your comfortability level is going to be. To address your second question, now this is a common misconception that we are in the sky. You guys are just up there playing around with the controls. That's why we're bumping around. I'm gonna bring this into a kind of a science perspective where an airplane is just like a boat, where we have a medium that we are traveling through, because people forget that air is a fluid in a way. So if you're on a small lake, the water's calm, you're gonna have a smooth boat ride. You're gonna take that same boat out to the ocean where we have a lot of waves and currents and a lot more motion that's going into it. That's the equivalent of us going up in the sky, where a lot of times we have smooth air. It's nice, but we're running into different air temperatures, different pressures that causes air to move. And as it moves, you might be run into air moving in a different way, and that's your pothole, that's your bump. And a lot of times we can predict a little bit of it based off of another pilot's experience, somebody that has taken that road recently. We can kind of determine, like, one of the most impressive things that you might find that you might not notice on when you're sitting in the back of an airplane, the captain turns on the seatbelt sign before it starts getting bumpy. If you ever notice that, you're lucky enough to do that, they're going to be like, boom, hey, folks, we're going to experience a little bit. And normally within the first 30 seconds after that, you start rocking just a little bit, because we try to get as much information about that beforehand so no one gets hurt, but it's not really something that we can avoid. And the biggest thing that we have is called clear air turbulence, CAT, where there's no thunderstorm, there's no mountains, there's nothing that would tell you this is coming. And that's why they encourage you to keep your seatbelt on during all that time. It's not something that we can see coming up. It's just, we're just gonna hit it.
So that's the freakiest part, because I was actually going to lead to that, because I've been on a plane, and I'm just like, yo, we're not in the clouds right now. Like, what is happening? So it's more of the air pressure, and there's probably some alert system. I mean, communication and things like that you are getting. It's not something we visibly can see that's creating this turbulence. It's more of the actual atmosphere in which the plane is flying.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, because I thought it was the clouds, because of course many of the times I've experienced it was flying through clouds. Other times I didn't fly through clouds, but that's the part where I'm just like, what is going on? Especially on the clear day, you just got the bumping going on, and then that. Uh, all right, one more phenomenon I need to know about, because it was the
Yeah,
first and only flight that I ever took, which kind of shook me. I was already scared, and that was the moment in which we were flying. Turbulence hit. I'm freaking out. I probably was like 12 or whatnot with my mom. Shout out to whatever airline that was. It might have been Delta, who upgraded us to first class on that day just because. And I really appreciated that. It was my first flight. The pilot actually allowed me to look at the cockpit and everything, because it was like, oh, this is sweet. Because they told him. Now, with that being said, that experience was great, being in first class and all at 12 years old for my first flight. But once we hit that turbulence, I looked over, and of course the business people, they're just like, yeah, we here all the time. They ain't even reacting. But then there was this moment, right, where while we was flying, it just dropped. Like, at least that's what it felt like. It might not actually happen, but there was this immediate feeling of, oof. And it was, my mama had a poker face the whole time. And then it was that moment when she was like, woo. And I was like, what you going for? And this guy over here is not reacting. And I'm like, this plane is going down. It was like a free fall for like 3 seconds. It might have been 5. It felt like forever. What the heck is that?
That is a derivative of the same exact thing. So you hit some potholes in your car and it doesn't really affect you, get a little pop. You hit a ditch or a big bump, things can happen like that. But that's why we fly at the altitudes that we fly at, just keeping a safe margin between you and the ground. In most cases, we recover pretty quick. You said 3 to 5 seconds. The plane's not falling out of the sky. Typically, we'll talk about some air pressure sort of thing where you are basically riding at an altitude, and then we'll say it gets, I don't know, the best perspective, if you're not familiar with the thing, is you're flying across the desert. It's very hot. There's warm air. It's keeping you up. You then cross over a very large lake where you don't have that lifting force of the air. So now the plane is going to struggle to kind of keep where it's at and just kind of sinks at that moment. That would be a more calm kind of descent. It can also happen when we cross over warm fronts, cold fronts. If you ever watch the weather and during the day, when we actually have to deal with these sort of things where, yeah, it's raining in Memphis, but we're not in Memphis yet, but we're getting all the residual effects of this hundreds of miles before crossing that line, where it's a normal thing in life where you just, it's a bumpy road. You'll see the business people keep a poker face. I'm probably the worst passenger to sit next to because I don't get spooked at all anymore. I just trust that this system works, and I want to, share that faith with my mannerisms for everybody else. Like, you see nervous flyers, they start tensing up and breathing all hard. It's like, nah, man, we're fine. We're normal.
Yeah. Okay. So since you've mentioned myths and whatnot, I'm also curious to know, as many of us, of course, probably are, the cruise control conversation. At what point are you actually flying? At what point are we doing cruise control? And if you got cruise control, why would we really want you to fly? We probably might feel a little bit more secure just knowing the robot is going. So just talk about that. I mean, other people may absolutely disagree. I'm speaking from a level of ignorance of not knowing a whole lot about this. So definitely clear some air for me.
So the cruise control, in most regards, we call that the autopilot in the industry.
Autopilot, my bad.
Autopilot, no problem. So for me on a daily basis, I fly aircraft that are not equipped, or we disable the autopilot because we, as pilots, want to learn to actually stick and rudder, hand fly these airplanes and get a feel for it. At a certain altitude and certain airspeeds, it's not conducive to try to hand fly an airplane that's going 400 miles an hour at 30,000 feet. It's every small movement of the flight control surfaces at those speeds is going to rock the plane completely, just like unflyable in that regard. So what we do is, above 24,000 feet, it's actually a requirement in the United States that you operate under an autopilot unless it becomes disabled sometime during flight, at which point you will descend down to a lower altitude and slow down. So it's actually required. But to that regard, if you work at an office and you're sitting at a laptop all day, are you working? Are you doing the work, or is the laptop doing all the work? Like, who gets the credit for that experience? You would say the worker that's doing all the inputting is the one that's doing all the work. For our autopilots, it's just a computer that we use to reduce the workload so we can work on other tasks.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
As a defend the industry, right? So for the airline that I'm going towards, they have a rule that it's normally below 10,000 feet. We click the autopilots off and we're hand flying those planes all the way down to the ground, or on takeoff all the way up to 10,000 feet. It's all kind of really hand flying because below 10,000 feet, there's actually a speed limit up in the air. Above that, there is no real speed limit in the United States. You can fly as fast as you want in most cases. So it's a little easier to fly it at a slower airspeed. Still not a slow speed, but it's definitely a slower airspeed. But the myth is, all we do is click on the autopilot, we sit back there and we do small talk. Now there's really like 1,000 decisions every second that we're making up there in the cockpit in order to keep that flight safe. And that's really the skill set that I try to impart on the students is, as you guys progress into larger aircraft, the automation or the systems that help you become more sophisticated, and you might do less physical work, but your decision making has to be very, very heightened. And the number of decisions that you have to make is astronomical. So having the autopilot as that assistant is actually very, very helpful to keep us safe and that smooth flight. You're less likely to feel a whole bunch of bumps unless you're hand flying, that sort of thing.
Okay, couple quick questions since you mentioned it.
Mhm.
How fast are planes going? Like what like and how fast can they go and can we feel it? Yeah.
So no, you're probably not going to feel it until you come in for landing. But on a normal commercial flight, depending on the size of the airplane, mostly you're probably doing 500 miles per hour across the ground. Or if you looked at it on the ground, it'd be 500. But then you get the added benefit of tailwinds or headwinds that's going to accelerate you a little bit faster. So below 10,000 feet, we are restricted to 250, we call it knots, so it's a nautical mile per hour. It's a unit that's a little bit larger than a normal mile, but you can think of 250 as 275 miles per hour if you were going in a car. That's what we're limited to under 10,000 feet, and then per some regulations, I'll have you slow down some more. The aircraft that I fly on a daily basis, um, we probably don't do better than 150 knots on the across the ground, and that's we're just training in that regard. Um, an empty plane could probably do 1.3 Mach on a normal basis, which is 1.3 the times the speed of sound. So you can easily do 800 miles per hour if you wanted to. We don't normally do that with customers on board, and with the weight that they carry in terms of just fuel is not something that you're gonna see on a daily basis.
Okay, okay. Um, is it condescending for people to be clapping when you land?
So this is actually a fun topic right here. I always thought it was to where it's like you had no faith in our ability to get you down safely. Like it's not that big a deal. We do this every day. But I just recently read a book called Clap When You Land. It actually was very loosely related to aviation. It was actually more about a family dynamic of an affair or a secret family, had nothing to do with it. But the starting part of it was the main character's father had passed away in an accident. It was a flight from New York to the Dominican Republic that crashed on takeoff. So they never made it out of New York. She goes to the airport to pick her father up, finds out there's an accident. So then we discover through all the family emotions of in the DR in terms of faith, their spirits, there's some voodoo related type things where they feel that this journey inherits risk. And it's not necessarily clapping for the pilot for a safe journey. It's more of being thankful that there was a safe journey because it's not guaranteed in that regard. So I personally, I don't clap when we land. I won't knock anybody that does though, because I don't know what their personal experience with the industry is. So you'll see it culturally from a lot of places in the Caribbean or a lot of places in South America where that is an appreciation not just for the flight crew, but probably to a higher entity or something like that, to where it's not condescending. No, feel free to clap.
Okay, okay. I was always curious. I mean, I've been on some planes. I mean, I also like that's the part where it's like many of us have been on planes where the landing was a little rough. Like, oh Jesus, Jesus. And then when it stopped, you like maybe Jesus really did take the wheel at that moment. I don't know
Right.
what's happening, but I want off now. And then other times it's smooth. And so I didn't know if there was like some genuine reasoning behind where
That
it's
is,
like,
that is the hardest part of what we do is landing the airplane and trying to do it smoothly when you can is the goal. But Other times it's not even possible depending on what else is going on with the plane and the weather and whatnot. So you're going to get it on the ground. No pilot wants to break the airplane. No pilot wants this to be their last flight. So um, we will get you down as safely as it can. We will come to a stop. And if unable, your flight's going to be about 15, 20 minutes longer because we're going to take it back in the sky and bring it back around.
Okay. All right. Well, in wrapping up, we can't just omit the important part that people want to know too, which is what's that entry level salary, and what are potentially some of the caps, if there are caps, to the salary?
Gotcha, gotcha. So I'll speak upon like pre-pandemic, what the goal everybody's working for is to become that airline pilot, that commercial pilot. So your entry level, depending on the size of your company, might not be appealing. It might be in the mid $30,000 range, which is off-putting because you put in $100,000 investment in yourself. Like, how do you justify that sort of thing? But that very, very quickly multiplies itself. We talk about entry level as a first officer or a co-pilot, and you come in and you have to put in your time to where, not speaking just on regionals, I'm going to speak more closely to the company that I was going to go to, which is larger than a regional. It's one of the larger airlines in the country, where your entry pay was in the mid 80,000s. But by year two, you're up over six figures. By year four, you are well into your six-figure salary and living a pretty comfortable life in a very short amount of time.
Put a number on that, into the mid six figures. Put a number on there.
Oh, so I mean, depending on the company, if you are five 5 years in and still working in the same position, you're probably doing 150,000 a year. If you upgrade off of the first officer into the left seat, which is your captain seat, the benefits of that go way up. But we're going to talk about caps. The best paying airline in the industry right now for the US is Delta. Again, pre-pandemic. If you're a 10-year captain at Delta, there's a good chance you're making $338,000 a year on base salary on their contract, with other incentives, whether that's stock options or just overtime pay and stuff like that. So, like, you can see there's a drive to go do something like that, where you might be doing the exact same job as a pilot that's flying SkyWest, but you're at Delta, making three times as much or four times as much. So the cap is very defined, but it's a pretty high cap for the nature that we're doing. Because when we talk about job salaries and high end paying jobs, like a CEO might work how many hours per week? I'm asking that one for you.
Oh, I'm thinking, well, it depends on what type of CEO we're talking about. Are we talking about a face of a company and that's pretty much it? Or are we talking about an active CEO doing other
Active
things?
CEO.
So, I mean, I would I would assume, I'm not in that role, I would assume they're doing probably 60, 80 hours, maybe less on some weeks, but I would guess that they're getting driven pretty hard by especially if it's a public company. I would
Got
think
it.
they're pretty hard.
So when we talk about a 10-year captain at a major airline in the US, we're talking working maybe 14 days out of the month as well. That's the biggest benefit to what we do. Is you make a yearly salary, you are working hard, you are working some long hours, but the federal duty rest rules pertaining to this limits how long we can work, how many days we can work. And as you build up what's called seniority, you get to pick and choose those trips where you are actually working less the more you get paid and the higher you get up in that regard. Now, there's some that might still go to work every single day, but like a typical schedule for those guys are, you're looking at 11 days off during the month when you start out, and then you can just keep building that up to 18, 20 days. You might work a couple trips a month, stay current, but you're still getting paid very, very well on that. So that's the biggest draw to where no matter what the hurdles are getting into the career, the as of right now, the rewards definitely outweigh that headache that it's gonna take.
Man. So wow, that's amazing, man. I okay. You're also a flight instructor.
Yes.
So what's the entry level and what's the potential cap for a position like that?
So again, it all revolves around how you get in, what company you get in. So you can work at your local airport as a flight instructor, and you're basically your own personal contractor. You find your own students, and they kind of pay you their fees. So with, I'm gonna take when I first started training. We're gonna choose a random number. Say an airplane costs $125 an hour to rent, and you need that airplane in order to do a flight lesson. So your student's got to pay $125 to rent the airplane, and then they're going to give you your $40 an hour to fly with them. So you are building your flight time off of their dime and making, a nice piece of change per hour. A very limited amount of hours that we are allowed to teach. So like we can only do up to 8 hours of teaching in an actual airplane per day, but that's still not likely because that's a number of students. That's a lot of consistent things that need to happen in order to have that. So a flight instructor, it's not glamorous money. I think when I first started, my initial offer was $27,000 a year to instruct. Now, without going into specifics, near double that in terms of the experience level and certain incentives that I had for I've added onto my flight instructing thing. So like
What
CFI.
I'm not I don't wanna because I know that's personal for you. So what is maybe the cap
Okay. The
for
cap, the cap is a really, really wide, really, really wide. So my instructor at the same company that I work for now was doing pretty good numbers. Um, but the industry changes and not going to have that. So you can have flight instructors that are still making six figures if you get in the right position. Like I teach on light twin and piston aircraft. If you teach on a jet, obviously your compensation goes up with that. Like we have a couple people on our staff that fly out a different airport here in Phoenix that their average salary is like 85K in the jet versus where in other lighter twin aircraft that are piston driven, um, there's not that big of a market for it. So we make considerably less. So it's just really where you find yourself, where you fit in. Like I said in the beginning, we all have the same qualifications, which makes the job market so difficult. Like, how do you differentiate yourself with, well, I have this license. Well, we know how you got this license. So what makes you different? And it all comes with experience. And a big thing that they look at is number of flight hours do you have? How long have you been flying? Like, how much time have you put into the actual airplane or actual simulator? And that's kind of the differentiating market for it. So people will tell you there's a long line. You got to pay your dues. You put in the time. That's what that and it that is relatively true. But you can definitely put yourself in a better situation than just kind of expecting that at this point in my career, I have X amount of hours. I'm going to do this now because there's really not there's not a formula for that, and the pandemic has actually derailed a lot of that normal progression that you would go through. But salary rise, you're looking any it I know it's a difficult question to answer because you're looking at 25,000 to 100,000, and it's just a matter of like where you get in and what situation you're at. So there's nothing.
is that pilot? Is that flying a does that depend on who I'm flying? Like who's my student? If my student makes a significant amount, like if I have say upper all my clients are people from upper class and they want a specific experience, they want a specific actual plane to fly, and so they just so happen to pay similar to like an NBA player. paying like we may pay $25 for a haircut. NBA player may pay $100+ for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about your clientele. So I have friends that teach outside the school. We have people that are willing to pay this amount and they get this quality of training and this kind of airplane. And then there's people that want to pay a premium for this aircraft and this type of training and how fast they want to get through it. So it's really a dynamic situation in terms of what the going rate is, but there's high end clientele, and then there's the mom and pop shops that are just, hey, I don't have aspirations to be a commercial pilot. I want to take my family up, or I just want to go up. And this was our fun day date, where we just kind of go play around the airplane. And there's a price point for each one of those.
Okay. All right, man. I think you gave a lot today. I absolutely appreciate it. I'm rooting for you. We're all rooting for the planet to get over COVID too. So once all these things come together, I'm hoping that you up in the air and you flying for whatever company that is out there, and that you get all of the greatest experiences that we all wish that we could have. Because I'm sure you're gonna have so many cool stories. I mean, just talking about the type of things that you may fly over and be able to witness, and the places that you'll go and the experiences you'll have, man. That's such a phenomenal thing. And trust me, I'm paying attention because that's something I definitely envy a little bit of. Love what I do, but I still just think that things are so cool. And we get one life, and unfortunately, because it's only one life, we can only do so much in it. But you need to maximize that time, and sounds like you're maximizing your time. And I believe that the people today have absolutely received information from a person who clearly isn't waking up on Mondays and despising it. You're doing too much work to continue to live a life like this. And so that's the number one goal. And as you see, if you're passionate about it, if you commit yourself, if you put in all the extra time, and he gave you little quick tips, said it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, but hey, I know people do lift. There might be a nice little trick to get a couple flight lessons here and there, but it's very possible, regardless of where you are, it sounds like, to take on this feat. It's just how much are you willing to do, and what is your tolerance level for the pressure financially to pull this off. But go ahead and follow through with what you actually want to do. I believe in you. I hope that today's video has led you to know how to become a pilot, what's the experiences of it, some of the inside information of an actual pilot, and understanding why we are flying in bumpy roads. And yeah, man, I definitely appreciate you, man. Thank you for your time. And like that, to ease. All right, bro. That's oof.